Hey guys, Dan Kelly, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of the Club Preview Series. On today's episode, we're talking about the mighty fucking Hawks, baby. The mighty Hawks. If you didn't know, the Hawks are my favourite club, and I love them very much. So I feel like I should be quite knowledgeable in what I'm about to say about them fantasy-wise. I do think there are a couple options to be discussed, so let's get into today's video.
All the pain.
We have to listen to the song. I'm sorry, not all the song, just a little bit of song, because it's disrespectful if you don't. I don't care what anyone says. Alright, that'll be enough. So we're talking about the Hawks today, and we're talking about fantasy, if we must. So the Hawks finished in 7th in 2024 after having a bit of a breakout year, and what was a bit of a surprise in the AFL world after they finished in the bottom three the year prior. So they really improved quite significantly and surprisingly made finals. After a really rough start, I must say, I think it was we were 0-5, so 0 wins, 5 losses to start the season, and we only got our first win against North Melbourne, who were below us. So really wasn't anything to write home about at the start of the season, and it really wasn't looking any good to start off. But they slowly through the season became a lot better, and they really changed their style, and the pieces started to fall together, and they really improved throughout the season. In 2025, there's a bit of speculation about what's going to be happening in terms of do they continue what they were doing and improve again with some important inclusions that they had, which we'll get into in a minute. Or do they fall off after having a bit of an impressive year last year? Do teams start to find out how to shut them down and stop their game style? So it'll be a bit of watch and see in 2025, but I may be a bit biased here, but I think they will slightly improve. As I said, I think they've made some really important inclusions, which we really struggled in, particularly in that defensive line. So I think the inclusions that we bring in, which is obviously Tom Barrass and Josh Battle, only make our defensive structure so much sounder. We obviously really struggled in that area last year, where we were pretty much running just Sam Frost as a key defender. Then James Sicily was filling in as a second key defender, which we all know he's not a key defender. He is the intercepting king, and he shouldn't be playing as a key defender, and he will not be playing that this year. So that will be an interesting watch, but we'll get into him a little bit later. I should just say before I start the video and start getting to players, I may go in a little bit deeper than I usually. I've only got 4 players on my list because I believe there's only 4 players that are really relevant in terms of fantasy this year. So I will be doing a bit of a deeper dive just because I do know them quite well. Where was that? The trade outs. So trading outs really was no one relevant in terms of fantasy, but Chad Wingard was a retirement. He's really done nothing for us since he came over from Port Adelaide, so no real loss in terms of that. It really just opens up a spot for a permanent spot for Nick Watson, I think, in my eyes. He wasn't playing last year, he didn't play a single game with his Achilles injury anyway, so really not relevant. And there was no other notable names that were delisted in terms of fantasy-wise. Obviously, I know them, but not in terms of fantasy. The Hawks really didn't go to the draft with anything major. They had pick 35 and 64, so nothing that was probably relevant, and I doubt they'll really get a shot with the depth that we have in our list. I think there's a lot of other options that I see in each line that will come in way before the likes of these 2 rookies, so I probably won't mention them at any stage. My God, as soon as I start recording, I do that. Bloody hell. So let's start to get into some specific players. I'll show you that again after. So Dylan Moore, we have got to start at the top, and Dylan Moore needs to be spoken about for a couple of reasons. So he is priced at 92 and at 944k, and surprisingly for others, but not surprisingly for me, he is the number 1 ranked forward heading into the 2025 season. So it's pretty low bar when it comes to forwards. The highest one is ranked got an average of 92, whereas every other line has at least a 110 in front of it. So that's nearly 20 points below every other line. You know, you're looking at defenders, you're looking at Sheasel, he's like at 115. Midfielders, you got the Trelaw at 110, and then you got the ruck line, which is at 117. So there is a massive gap between the other lines and the forward line. So it is quite vital when you're trying to pick your forward line quite. It is quite important to pick your forward line quite well, so you're not missing out on too many points. But here's a surprise, I guess, in that sense that he does not really have a lick of CBA usage. I know it says he's got 16% average. That's pretty much one CBA in a game, or very little. And he's just a genuine small forward who just works hard and just spreads. And it really works with their Hawks game style, that they really work hard on and make their opposition tired, so they really spread really wide, really utilizing the wings quite a lot when they're coming off the halfback, and that's where he receives a lot of his points, is when they're coming off halfback. They're either handballing it through the passages, or they're going to kick long to someone that's free, and that's often Dylan Moore, or it's to a contest down the line, and Dylan Moore is often at their feet getting a cheap possession here and there. So what do I see Dylan Moore going into 2025? I think he's going to be pretty consistent. There is probably an argument to say that he's going to improve, just given the fact that Hawks are improving slightly. We expect they're probably going to spend more time in their forward line, which means more opportunities for the likes of Dylan Moore. We only need to look at his numbers from last year when we were shit. We did finish third last, and he still averaged 88. He is just a ball magnet when it comes to that sort of sense. So he could be anything. Do I think he can hit triple figures? It's probably a bit of a stretch. I do think there are times where he's going to cop a bit of attention just because, he is quite damaging and has been one of our damaging players for a while. So there is that potential. But when I'm looking into his numbers and I did the research, he actually averaged 101 in the back half of the season, which is when we started the really tick and we really started to improve. Really had a slow start to the season. Like I said, we were quite bad to start the season. Like I said, we didn't have a win in the first 5 weeks, and we beat North Melbourne. We got smashed by the Sydney Swans the week after. And it doesn't really matter if we're getting smashed or not. He just seems to provide. So I expect him to be consistent, but there's probably no chance for me to start him in my side. I think he's too expensive, and I don't think the upside is really there. And I understand that we want to have a consistent, and we want to have the best top forwards that we can, but we still got to prioritize value when we can. As we know, we all know the game now. Value is king, and we need to trust that. We can't trust on these natural progressions. We saw last year with someone who I won't be talking about in this video, in Jai Newcomb. A lot of us started him last year. I think it was maybe like 12% or something like that, if not even more, that we thought he was going to have a natural progression, and that obviously fell short and really hurt a lot of people's seasons to start off. So that's a new philosophy for me, that I won't be picking anyone that has a natural progression. I'll be only looking at role changes or club changes, etc., or naturally built in value from injuries or coming back from an injury as such. So got plenty of options to go with, but Dylan Moore is one that I probably won't be starting with in my side. The next person who is a little bit more popular, I'll say, and that is James Sicily, the captain. If I can spell his name correctly, I am sorry. He is priced down at 87, so just below 900k there, and that is way down on his average of 104 from the year prior. We know how good this guy can be, and we all know the reasons why he is down as far as he is this year, and that was, like I said off the top, he was in a key defensive role, being the second tool at Hawks, and that really limited his ability to be able to be consistent with his role, because it was really team dependent on the opposition. If they have too many key defenders, he would have to really lock them down quite heavily, and he didn't get that opportunity to intercept as he would normally, and he also wasn't able to get that cheap possession, which we have seen in the past when he has been a fantasy defender for us. with the inclusions of Harass and Battle, that really opens up the opportunity for Sicily to return to that intercepting role, and I do believe that is what he's going to be. There is some speculation that he may spend more time forward with those inclusions, and they've also got Scrimshaw, who can do a very similar role to James Sicily, so that is a little bit of a concern for me, but I'm very doubtful that he's going to spend a huge amount of time forward. It probably is only going to be when the game is on the line, in the fourth quarter. So, and we have seen that he is capable of kicking quite a couple goals in those periods. He is a very good footballer, so it does no guarantee that it's going to be a downfall for him in terms of his fantasy scores, but it is something to be concerned about. If it's something that's going to become a regular appearance in their side, that's the only thing that I'm a bit skeptical of. So it's a big watch for me. He's spent a bit of time in my side, but not a huge amount that I can just be like, I need to lock this guy in, because there are some concerns there for me. He has lost kick-ins as well, given that Jarman Impey and the likes of Amon have really taken that role, really just trying to utilize their speed, and that's the game style they're trying to go through. So they're really trying to use their small defenders to really to penetrate the ball through the midfield and the wings and then get forward. So that's where it sort of bypasses Sicily a little bit, whereas we've seen in the past Hawks are more than happy to sort of chip it around. We saw it in the first half of last year, but they really changed that towards the back end of the season. So that's the concern for me. The other problem is that obviously the Hawks have the early round bye in round 4, so they've got that with Essendon. So I can't imagine it's going to be too heavy of a bye for us. So you can probably have 1 or 2 players in there, no worries. You obviously just got to have the rookies there to back it up and provide those scores for you to really minimize the damage that comes through those buys. But besides that, Sicily presents 10 to 15 points of value if he can get back to his best, which we all really want and what we sort of expect from him. What do I expect him to get back to? I probably can see him getting back to sort of a 95 to 98 sort of range. I don't know if the game style is going to be as inducive as we have seen in the past to get back to his 104 days. I don't think they're going to be spending as much time in the back line for him to really boost his points up that high. We saw some massive scores from him in that year, 165s, a 150. Even last year he had a 137. And we have seen those days where he can absolutely go big when that's just chipping all around. And there will become times when that he can absolutely do that. I do expect those days to still come. But I think also the time forward, which we'll probably see a little bit more, is also going to be a little bit of a down and bring his average down a little bit more. So highly one I recommend if you want to start him, and if you don't have too many on the round 4 bye and he can fit in your structure, whatever. But there's a lot of others that you need to consider at that price range and in that sort of underpriced premium that you got to consider. The next one I want to talk about is Will Day, and he is the most popular of the Hawks boys. I think he's up around 25% at the moment, and for good reason, right? He is priced way down at 74 this year after what was his average of 95 last year. So he is way down, just 21 points, on value there alone. So that's priced in about 760k. So it's a real mid-pricer range. He really had an injury-affected year last year. So he's missed the early part of the season after with a foot injury. He was in a cast, or whatever you want to call it, a brace, up until round 6 or 7, I believe. And really had a slow start. I think his first 2 games he had like a 50 and then like a 65. Like, it was really, really unusual for him, and I think he was just still getting over his injury there. So you can probably discount those scores. And then he also had another injury in the back half of the season where he dislocated his collarbone, which would be very uncomfortable. Which really resulted in his average really dropping. So those 2 injury-affected scores, you can just see he obviously had a couple games where he was subbed out, and that already justifies that he's probably a few points under what we expect from him, just based on his average last year. And like I said, this was off the back of some very low scores of a 40, 47. I can show you them here, actually. I should be a bit more visual. 47, like I said, 47, 58. Then he sort of got back into his stride of things through the middle past season. And then he got tagged by the likes of Toby Bedford against GWS. And then he sort of had a few other issues. He got subbed out these 2 games pretty early. One tactically and one injured, obviously. So those are very unusual low scores for Will Day. I can even show you his previous years where he's quite consistent. You don't really see these very low scores from him very often. Like there's not a red dot in there to be seen. The lowest I think he had all year was a 70. So that really shows you that he has a quite high floor when he isn't being managed and when his body isn't sore. So fingers crossed with a full lick of health through the preseason. He always finds a way to get injured, so it's a long way to go. Fingers crossed for the Hawks he can get through unscathed and use his body very well for us. But getting to the stats, when I remove those bad games, what does he average? He averages, if I can find it in my notes here, he averaged 99.6, so just below the 100 mark there, just based on these games alone. Now, I thought it was pretty unfair to say that he shouldn't have got the 58 and the 40 because he did play full game time and he did play a full-time mid-roll. It wasn't like he was playing out of position for any unusual reason. He was just didn't score well in those games. Whether for whatever reason it was, one was injured, one was tagged, and one was potentially he was getting over that injury. But even with those 2 scores included, he still averaged 91. So that's still 17 points of value off the rip. You could speculate he was underdone and sore. So again, with a fully healthy preseason, these scores shouldn't happen. As I said, he's very consistent, but I am concerned. I have some concerns with the Hawks game style. Obviously, I said that they sort of shifted last year, where they're no longer using this sort of kick handball game, where we really saw Will rely on. I can even show you his scores from last year, back down here in the game logs. So looking at 2023, I won't go too far. Look at the tackle numbers. So under M here, 3, 9, 6, 7, 11, 5. So really high number of marks. What happened in 2024 is where we really seen a reduction in marks overall for the Hawks, and that is a concern for me that we may not see the heights of that 95 we saw last year. Because, again, they're really trying to use this happy handball, over handball, move it through the corridor phase. So that may not see as much marking for the likes of Will Day. It may also spend more time forward, so he may not be around that ball as often as where he is naturally more of a halfbacker. He really helps back down halfback, which saw him get a lot of these marks. So that is a bit of a concern for me. However, I still think he's on the edge of my team. He has spent a bit of time on my team as a genuine mid-pricer, so he'd be either around that M4, M5 sort of range. He is definitely one I want to watch, and if I like what I see through the preseason, where he is fit, he is healthy, and maybe if he can adapt to the game a little bit more just by moving around the ground a bit better than what I saw last year, then he is absolutely one that I would be locking into my side pretty quickly. No matter of the opening round buy or whatever you want to talk about, he has too much value to deny. Now, the last guy I want to talk about is probably one that's not many other people are talking about, but I absolutely love him, and he is currently in my side, and that is Connor McDonald. I keep pressing the wrong button. Connor McDonald. He is an absolutely fantasy jet, if you didn't know him from the old draft period. He is priced at 78, so just bang on 800k. He really took his game to a whole new level in the back half of 2024. Obviously, he stepped up his game overall in 2024, but by increasing his average by 7 points. But really, we're looking at the back half of the year where Hawks really stepped it up, and he was a big factor in that. Just looking at his numbers here. After the bye, he went at 88, and that included that low 39 in that semi-final against Port Adelaide, which was a day we will forget as Hawks fans. As we do, we cherry pick some scores. Removing that score, he averages 93. Now, I'm not saying he potentially averages 93 for the year, but I think he has a potential to be upwards of 15%, 15 points of value for us as a genuine forward premium. And it, obviously with those averages, he's gonna push the top 6 forwards. So, and the particular thing with him is that what gives me confidence is even when we were shit, as of last year, we finished third last, he was still averaging 70 in a very small forward pocket. So, shows you that he is just a genuine ball magnet. He knows how to find the ball. He knows how to work hard. He really spreads well on the field. And like I said, with the Hawks, they really spread and work hard and tire out their defense, their opposition. So he's probably on the very similar lines of a Dylan Moore on the opposite wing. So it really doesn't matter which wing they're going to. It's going to go to Moore. It's going to go to Connor McDonald down the line. And I could very much see him getting close to what Dylan Moore is averaging this season. I genuinely think that, and that gives me a lot of confidence. It's probably my bold prediction, and why I'm quite confident on it is that he's going to be pushing top 6 forwards. I know we're looking at Bailey Smiths, and you're looking at your Jack McRae, you're doing Caleb Daniels, and then you got Philippou as well. I think he could at least surpass 2 of them, and be within that top sort of 5 or 6 forward lines quite easily. And we're also throwing in Horn Francis in there. That's already 5 or 6 forwards. So I think he's going to be part of that group. And he's currently in my side as my F1. I don't see a world unless something happens in preseason where I don't start him. I really think he's taken it to the next level. And again, with the Hawks improving, I think it's only going to benefit him to improve his average next season. Now, I could be completely biased and I may change my mind as the season develops on, but at this point in time, I can't really be wrong. It's still early in January, so I will put my Hawthorn cap on and own it as I can. The other thing crazy to me is that he is 0.8% owned in fantasy. He is very, very owned, and I hope he's going to be a keeper for me all season. So that's the other thing you want to consider when you're looking at these mid prices. Are they going to be a keeper for you? In this case, if he is the average of 90 or even higher than that, he is absolutely going to be a keeper for us because he can push that top 6. Some other considerations. So those are the only 4 I really had notes on. I just really wanted to quickly brush over the best 22, and I think they've sort of got to bang on a little bit. Obviously with a few names here and there not included, but backline's pretty consistent. Obviously the 2 inclusions slot straight in, taking those key roles. Will Day smack bang in the middle, absolutely. Josh Weddle was one that I could have spoken about a little bit. He's probably going to be moving up to a wing role, sort of taking what was a Morrison or a Ward's role. So that could leave him with a bit of a more opportunity to score. But it's a bit of an awkward price to pay for him, considering I think he's averaged about 55, and he really hasn't shown much of a fantasy relevant score. He's hit a couple of 80s and a couple of 90s, but he's relied on goals to get to those scores. So he's one that I'm probably not super hot on, but definitely on the watch list. Josh Battle, not super fantasy relevant, and also not going to be playing the most fantasy friendly game. But obviously coming to a new club, I want to have a look at him, see what he can do. If we're wrong and he's going to be playing a different role, then he might be something we can consider. The other thing is that CJ could potentially make a return to the side. I probably don't see it as much, just given that we do have quite a bit of depth and we didn't see him a huge amount in 2024. I think he played like 11 games. I think he's down at like 45 average, so he is quite low and he hasn't shown a huge amount of fantasy game. But he would be coming off the halfback quite heavily, which we have known to be quite fantasy friendly. So those are the real only ones I want to talk about. The only thing I wanted to mention as well is that today there was an interview with Dylan Moore, and that he sort of brushed on the fact that Sicily and Josh Battle could spend some time in the forward 50. So that gives me more concerns that James Sicily could spend more time forward, which again wouldn't reflect too well on his average. just because, again, he obviously averages a lot more as a defender than a forward. So that is still a bit of a concern for me. I'm gonna still wait and see. We get to see it in the opening rounds. We get plenty of looks at it. I think we're gonna get 3 or 4 looks at it before we have to make that decision. So big watch on him to come. But obviously more news will come to hand as we go through the preseason. We're still a fair way. It's only the 9th of January as of recording, so we've still got plenty of time to go. I just want to keep talking about the Hawks all day. Lloyd Meek is probably another one I looked into in terms of ruck, but he played, I'd say, 90% of the year as a solo ruck, so I think he's probably priced at what he's going to be priced at. He didn't really show too much of improvement towards the back end of the season. Like, he got some big numbers, got some low numbers, but he's relatively pretty consistent throughout the year, besides an injured score in there. So not really too keen on that one. Like I said, we're not talking about John Newcomb. I don't think anyone's going there this year. Amon, I don't think anyone's going to trust him this year. Oops. He's priced at what he's going to be at. Dan Rosio, while he probably does present some value with, the games that he was subbed out in the season, I don't think it's one that you'd be paying up for. I don't think there's enough on the bone there to really warrant that pick. Not touching James Walpole, he's sort of at where he's going to be at. More of an impact player when it comes to footy. Looking through the names, I think that's about it, honestly. Cam McKenzie could probably be one that you want to look at. He did have a pretty good back end of the season. But again, I don't see him breaking into the side. He's not in this side, he's in the emergency list. But we never know, there could be injuries and he could slot straight into that midfield spot quite easily. If there was an injury out of the 3 main mids plus Connor Nash, then he could be the next one that sort of drops in there, I'd expect. So big watch on him if that occurs, because he is priced pretty cheaply as well. But I think I've blown on enough about the Hawks. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.